The sun was blazing over the ranch lands. The air shimmered with heat, the grass dry and sharp under bare feet. Inside a dusty cabin, the sound of a girl's screams cut through the silence. Emily was 21, her face pressed against the splintered wood floor. A heavy hand forced her down. The smell of sweat and cheap whiskey choked her lungs. Every breath was a struggle. She begged, she cried, but her words turned to dust in the heat. The man towering over her only laughed. His grip tightened in her hair. Her scalp burned as he yanked her head back. He slapped her until her lips split. Blood ran hot down her chin. The sunlight streamed through the cracks in the cabin wall, lighting her broken figure. Her torn shirt hung loose, her body bruised and filthy. Each kick she threw only brought another blow to her ribs. The man cursed. He spat at her. He said she was nothing more than payment for her sister's debt. Those words crushed her spirit more than the fists did. Her sister. Her own blood had sold her to this beast. Emily's heart broke even as her body suffered. The sound of fabric ripping filled the hot air. Her throat ached from screaming. Her body trembled as his shadow covered her. Her vision blurred from the tears. The heat of the noon sun pressed down on her chest like a weight. She thought it was the end, but her hand brushed against iron. A heavy tool left carelessly on the floor. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Her breath stuttered. With one desperate swing, she brought it crashing down. The iron struck his skull with a sickening crack. The man dropped beside her. His body hit the floor with a thud that echoed in the stifling cabin. Blood seeped into the wood. Emily froze, her eyes locked on the crimson stain spreading fast. Her whole body shook. She thought she had killed him. Her stomach turned. Her lungs burned for air. She pushed herself up, her knees scraping against the floor. Her hands were filthy with sweat and blood. Her torn shirt clung to her body, soaked with dirt. The sunlight pierced through the doorway, calling her out. She stumbled, then ran. The noon sun blinded her as she burst from the cabin. The dry ground burned her bare feet. Her breath came in sobs. Her hair stuck to her bloodied face. Every step felt like knives cutting into her skin, but she ran anyway. She had to. Behind her lay the man she believed she had killed. Behind her lay the betrayal of her own sister. Her tears mixed with sweat as she staggered across the ranch land. The hot wind stung her eyes. The world spun, but she refused to stop. In the distance, she saw fences, a stable, the outline of another cabin. Hope flickered through her chest, faint but alive. Her legs buckled. She fell to her knees in the dust. She clawed at the ground, sobbing. Her cries rose into the hot, still air. Desperate for someone to hear, her life had shattered under the midday sun. Her spirit had been torn apart by cruelty and betrayal. And still one question burned in her mind. Why would her own sister hand her over to such a monster? What secret truth lay hidden in this brutal trade? And if the man she struck was not dead, what horror would come for her next? Emily stumbled across the dry yard and the sun beating down on her back. Her legs felt weak, her chest ached, but she pushed forward. She saw the outline of a ranch house. Her heart prayed someone was there. At the porch stood a man, tall, weathered, gray in his beard, about 56. This was John Carter, a rancher who had seen plenty of trouble in his life, but nothing like the sight before him now. Emily fell to her knees in the dust, and her cracked voice tumbled out between sobs. She told him about her sister's husband drowning in gambling debt. She told him how her sister had offered her up as payment, how she had been beaten, humiliated, and left to serve a man she hated. John stood still, his shadow covering her from the sun. At first, he said nothing. His eyes narrowed his jaw tightened, but he kept quiet. Emily clutched his boots, trembling like a child. She blurted out the thing she feared most. She believed she had killed a man. She said she had struck him, that she saw blood, that she ran before she could see if he was breathing. Her voice shook with guilt. Her eyes begged for forgiveness. John finally spoke. His voice was rough, but not unkind. He told her to stand up. He said no man should lay his hands on a woman that way. He said she had done what she had to do. Emily's tears spilled faster. Her chest heaved with each breath. She wanted to believe him, but the image of the blood would not leave her mind. Her hand still shook as if the iron tool was there. John offered her water, his hand steady as stone. She drank, coughing between gulps, dirt and tears running down her face. For the first time since she fled that cabin, she felt a sliver of safety, but fear still clung to her. What if the man she struck was alive? What if he came for her? And worse yet, what if her sister herself showed up at this ranch? Emily's body trembled. Her lips moved, but no sound came. John leaned closer, his brow furrowed. He asked her again, was it true her own sister had sold her? Emily nodded, her eyes wide with pain. Her voice cracked as she whispered, yes. It was my sister, my own flesh and blood. The rancher's face hardened. He had seen betrayal before, but not like this. He looked out over the dry field, his hand resting near the old revolver on his belt. And then the sound came, the creak of wagon wheels on the dirt road. Two figures moving closer, kicking up dust behind them. Emily's eyes went wide, her heart stopped. Her sister was here. Her sister had come to take her back. But what would John do now? The wagon rattled closer, the sound of its wheels grinding over dried dirt. Emily's body froze, her breath caught in her throat. John Carter stood steady on his porch, eyes narrowing as two figures came into view. It was her sister and her sister's husband. The husband climbed down first, his face swollen and bruised. Word around town was that he had been beaten half to death by the same man he owed money to. And now he wanted Emily back, to hand her over as payment once again. The sister stepped forward, her dress neat, her voice sharp as a whip. She shouted that Emily was theirs, that she had no right to run. Emily clung to the side of the porch, shaking her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her voice cracked as she begged not to go. John stayed quiet at first, his hand brushing against the worn revolver at his side. He had lived long enough to know when trouble was about to boil over. And this was it. The husband's eyes burned with desperation. His lip curled as he barked that Emily had killed a man and that she belonged to them. Emily gasped, shaking as her secret spilled out into the open. John's eyes flicked to her, reading the terror in her face, then back to the two who stood before him. The air grew heavier. The cicadas buzzed in the heat. Every second stretched thin. Emily dropped to her knees. Her voice was raw as she begged John not to give her up. Her hands clutched the dust, her sobs shaking through her whole body. John's chest tightened. He had told himself not to get involved. It was not his fight, but the sight of that young woman broken and begging cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Slowly, John stepped down from the porch. The old boards creaked under his boots. His hand moved to the revolver. The glint of the barrel caught the sun as he drew it. Steady as stone, the sister gasped, her eyes wide. The husband froze mid-step. John's voice was calm but sharp enough to cut the air. He told them to turn back. He told them they would not take Emily today, or ever. The silence that followed felt endless. Then, cursing under his breath, the husband grabbed the wagon reins. The sister hissed one last warning, her eyes filled with venom, before climbing back up. Dust swirled in the air as the wagon rolled away. Emily sobbed into her hands, the weight of relief crashing over her. John holstered his gun, his jaw still tight. He knew this was not the end. Folks that desperate did not give up easy. If you're still listening to this story, it means you are just as caught in it as I am telling it. Go ahead and subscribe, so you will not miss what happens when lies and betrayal go even deeper. Because in the next part, Emily's own sister will spread a rumor so dangerous it could destroy John's life forever. The wagon was gone, the dust still floating in the hot afternoon air. Emily sat on the porch steps, her face buried in her hands. Her sobs echoed against the wooden walls. John stood beside her, arms crossed, and his eyes scanning the empty road. He knew this was not over. He had seen the look in the sister's eyes. It was the look of someone who would rather burn the world than admit defeat. And sure enough, it did not take long. The next morning, whispers spread through town. John Carter, the old rancher, had taken a young woman against her will. Folks said he had hidden her, that he had bewitched her, that he was keeping her like a prisoner. Emily's heart nearly broke when she heard the words. She swore it was her sister behind the lies, her sister and that worthless husband trying to turn everyone against them. The thought of it made her sick. John said nothing at first. He simply tightened the strap on his holster and walked toward the corral. But Emily chased after him, her voice trembling. She asked what they would do. She She asked how they could fight against the poison her sister was spreading. John stopped, looking back at her with a calm she could not understand. He told her they would not hide. He told her the truth had a way of cutting through lies if they carried it straight to the law. So he saddled his horse, packed a jug of water, and told Emily to ride with him. The road into town was rough, the sun unforgiving. But Emily held tight to the saddle horn, her fear mixing with a strange new hope. When they reached the sheriff's office, John stepped inside first. The sheriff was an old friend, but even his eyes were clouded with doubt. The sister had been there already. She'd cried her tears, told her story, painted John as a monster who had stolen her poor little sister. Her husband stood beside her, his bruises on full display as proof of their suffering. Emily gasped. Her sister's voice dripped with venom, yet her face looked innocent enough to fool a preacher. The sheriff turned to John, his hand resting near his badge. He asked if it was true. Had John taken Emily against her will? The room went still. John's hand rested on the table. Emily clutched his arm, shaking her head, whispering for him not to let them take her. The sheriff waited, his eyes sharp. It was in that moment Emily saw the weight of it all, her fate, John's honor, and the truth of her sister's betrayal, all hanging by a thread. And then the door swung open, footsteps heavy on the floor. A voice none of them expected broke the silence. It was the man Emily thought she had killed. Alive, breathing, and very, very angry. The room froze as that voice cut through the air. Emily's heart dropped into her stomach. She turned slowly, her eyes wide. There he was, the man she thought she had killed. Still alive, standing tall in the doorway. His head wrapped in a blood-stained bandage, his glare sharp as a blade. Her sister gasped and rushed to his side, spinning her tale even deeper. She cried that Emily had struck him, that John had hidden her, that the two of them plotted against honest folk. The sheriff's eyes narrowed, unsure of what to believe, but John did not flinch. He stood firm, his voice calm but steady. He told the sheriff the truth, that Emily had been sold by her own sister to this man as payment for a debt. That she had fought for her life when he tried to break her, that she ran not out of guilt but out of terror. Emily's voice finally broke through her sobs. She told the sheriff everything, the betrayal, the beatings, the shame of being treated like cattle by her own blood. Her words carried the weight of a broken soul. The sheriff looked at John, then at Emily, then back at the bruised and bitter faces of the sister and her husband. The silence stretched long enough for every heart in that room to pound loud and hard. Finally, the sheriff stepped forward. His voice was sharp and final. He said justice would be served. The sister and her husband would face the law for their cruelty. The man with the bandaged head would answer for his crimes. Emily wept as the chains went on her sister's wrists. Her tears carried sorrow, but also release. The weight that had crushed her chest began to lift. When it was over, John led her back out into the sunlight. The town watched in silence as she clung to his arm. She was no longer